What if Overlord was in Transformers Prime, the finale? I feel like this is the best way to end this, considering it's nothing but action from start to finish. So without further ado, let's begin. We start off on the Decepticon warship, where Overlord had just deployed the Predacons on the Autobot base. Tyrannos Prime and Alita both fight them off back to back, with Alita being overwhelmed very quickly, but Tyrannos is able to use his fire manipulation to push a large majority of the Predacons back. This doesn't go unnoticed, however, as Ratchet calls every Autobot hand on deck, and so they grab what relics they have and, any weapons they have, and they prepare for their final battle. The Dinobots and the two Predacons, Skylynx and Darksteel, are the first ones to pretty much go up, while Dreadwing himself, accompanied by Brawl and Warpath, are the ones to pretty much fly up to the warship. Keep in mind, he's kind of like, I guess you could say, like tow cabling Warpath and Brawl, or they're just kind of like riding equally on his wings. So they do get up there somehow. And this is where they realize that Overlord's alone. He doesn't have anybody. But this is where the warship begins to glow, and they're asking what the heck is going on. But this is where we pan over a few moments later, or maybe a few hours later. Overlord had already just consumed a crap ton, if not all the reserves of Megatron's Dark Energon, making him more powerful than what he was before. And this is where Unicron possesses his spark, right? And simply states, "Oh, so you're one of the more recent Energon users. I looked into your mind, and believe it or not, I think you could be useful under my services." To which this is where Overlord simply asks, "So, you want to have me as your herald? Indeed, I will give you power unlike anything you've had before. Something that Megatronus had failed to do. And in doing so, you will reign supreme over this universe." To which Overlord simply states, "How could I refuse such a blessing?" So Unicron states very well and disappears. Overlord's body begins to glow with the Dark Energon, begins to contort and warp. You see, Overlord's face remains, but what you get is a golden and black body, kind of the opposite of Megatron. You have a more, matter of fact, not a golden and black, you have a black and I would probably say purple like color with hints of red in them. So Overlord would be converted into Unicron's herald. And this is where he actually does something else. Using his power and abilities, he actually brings the Decepticon warship to life, reactivating the likes of Trypticon. And so when the warship glows, or we pan back over to the present day, this is where the three of them basically see the warship transforming. And this is where everyone can see it, and they immediately rush out the base. Like, everyone's just running out and everything and stuff like that. And this is where even the Predacons that's serving Overlord look in absolute horror as Trypticon transforms and lands on the roof of the Autobot base. Luckily, they were able to get Jack, Miko, Raph, June, and Agent Fowler out of there pretty quickly. And this is where we actually see Chromia being the one to drive off and pretty much get them out of there. And this is where Skylynx and Darksteel are like, what the heck is that? And so Tarn himself explains that's Trypticon, the Titan, if you will. And he kind of explains the history of Trypticon in a short summary. It was Megatron's original super weapon. And this is where we honestly see that the Autobots kind of feel like they have nothing. However, Tyrannos Prime simply stands there and asks them, are they willing to do what needs to be done? To which every Autobot holds up their weapons, and they're simply ready to do what needs to be done, whether it's sacrificing themselves or anything. And this is where Alita actually finds something in the wreckage of the base, that being the Forge of Solus Prime. And she wields it, ready to do everything she can to stop Trypticon here. But this is where Overlord descends onto the battlefield, holding the Dark Star Saber, and simply states to Grimlock that he challenges him one warrior to another, to that they can settle this once and for all. So Tyrannus Prime picks up his Star Saber and his Cerberus blade, and simply walks towards Overlord and simply looks at Tarn and states, "You know what needs to happen, so get it done." To which Tarn simply nods and states, "Alright, I got a plan." So this is where the rest of the Predacons pretty much surround Skylynx and Darksteel, and they both transform, shocking the rest of the group. And this is where Skylynx and Darksteel basically state that Overlord wants nothing more than destruction. Are they willing to be heralds of his oblivion? Are they willing to be nothing more than his mindless servants? Or will they stand with them and their new allies so that they may prosper in the future? And so all the Predacons look at each other. You know, it's like a kind of a symbolic moment. And keep in mind, it's like an army size of Predacons here. And they all bow towards Skylynx and Darksteel. Meanwhile, Arachnid and the rest of the Insecticons are trying to coordinate their best assault to take down Trypticon. But again, his weapons are very powerful. They're able to get like scratches on him, but again, it's a scratch to a dinosaur is simply nothing when you're the size of an ant. And this is where the Predacons join in, now adding their firepower. And Skylynx and Darksteel both kind of just look at her like, we got this. And so the Insecticons actually begin to kind of figure out a way for Tarn to get in. And this is where Tarn, Warpath, and Brawl both converge on one spot, along with the likes of Dreadwing and the rest of the Autobots. And they shoot it, right? They just bombard it with everything that they have here. And so this allows Tarn and a few of them, I would probably say Moonracer, Wheeljack, and Bulkhead, to actually get in. And so this is where they actually begin helping Tarn against some of the weaponry systems within Trypticon. But Brawl himself looks at Warpath, and they state, "Hey, think we can get in on the fun?" And Warpath's like, "Hell yeah!" And so they both transform and drive off into another direction. But this is where we get to the battle between Tyrannus Prime and Overlord. They're locked in a semi-stalemate. Having the Star Saber and the Cerberus blade, I keep saying Cerberus blade, the Cerberus blade actually does help out a lot here, with both of them actually proving to be equal here. The power of Unicron does kind of balance out and makes Overlord a pure equal. And he simply states to Tyrannus Prime, calling by his actual name, Grimlock, that every time on Cybertron, you were always one of the biggest pains in Megatron's side. One of the reasons why he could never get into Icon. He could never do this. He could never do that. And he remembers the time he was in charge of a battalion as a test for Megatron. And he failed miserably because of him. And to which Tyrannus Prime is like, "What? Want a cookie?" And he's like, oh, no. I'm going to do what Megatron should have did long ago. And this is where he tries to blast him with Dark Energon, but Tyrannus Prime just simply blocks it with an X-Guard from his blades. This is where he combines the cosmic energy with the likes of the Star Saber and actually begins pushing back. But the energies prove equal until Overlord is shot in the back. It's Brawl and Warpath, and they both begin bombarding him over and over and over again. But again, the armor he has is now 10 times thicker than it was before. He's like, "Oh, you guys want a tank battle?" "Don't mind if I do." So this is where he creates Dark Energon monsters. And again, kind of just leaning into the Dark Energon creation as a whole with Unicron, because again, that is some untapped potential. So he creates Dark Energon monsters, This being able to charge at Grimlock Tyrannus Prime here, while he goes against the likes of Brawl and Warpath. They both take out their melee weapons and rush at him. But this is where he does something slick. He dodges them with the phase shifter, and them realizing he still has it, but it's too late. He's in another direction in his tank form, and he shoots at Brawl. Warpath, seeing this, pushes him out of the way, and he gets hit right through his own cannon, causing a massive amount of fatal damage. And this is where Overlord, still sadistic, allows Brawl to get in some final words with his buddy before he executes him. And this is where he holds Warpath in his arms. The Autobot that saved him, the Autobot that rescued him, he is dying right then and there. And this is where Warpath simply states, you know, despite our history of region as enemies, you become one of the best brothers I've ever had. It's been an honor, tank bro. And this is where Brawl is like, it's been an honor, my friend, my brother. I will avenge you. Rest well, Warpath. And so Warpath goes offline, holding his brother's hand. And so Overlord approaches with the Dark Starsaber, ready to execute him. But this is where he hears a roar of anger. And the Dark Energon clones, or Dark Energon monsters, are melted away in a astonishing orange flame here. Tyrannus Prime is in his Glavenus form at this moment, and he's just enraged here. And he charges at Overlord, tackling him away. Brawl, having a new resolve now, picks up his hammer and Warpath's hammer and actually begins to tag team with Tyrannus Prime. He does have to dodge some of the attacks, obviously, but he begins wailing on him fiercely, bombarding him over and over and over again. However, Alita, seeing that his weapons are going to break, does him a solid and actually tells Warpath to catch and tosses the Forge of Solus Prime towards him. So Warpath grabs it and swings it at Overlord, smacking him so hard he actually cracks his face. And to which Overlord's like, what? No, that shouldn't be possible. You shouldn't be doing this. So Tyrannus Prime, reverting back into his beast form, charges up both of his blades and tells Brawl to follow his lead. To which both of them begin tag teaming Overlord, slicing through, cracking through this armor over and over and over again. And Overlord is barely able to fend himself off. He creates Dark Energon monsters. Tyrannus Prime handles that. He tries to put up a Dark Energon barrier. Brawl breaks through that and cracks him again. His armor's crumbling. But what's happening back in Trypticon, right? Tarn has made his way to the core. And this is where he simply states, alright, I've made it. It's a shame, though. Won't be able to get Megatron's reign, or bring Megatron's reign back on Cybertron. But I'm going to entrust that to you two, Soundwave and Dreadwing. To which both Soundwave and Dreadwing hear this on the communicators and are both simply looking at each other, and they nod. So Tarn activates his ability, his technological disruption. And this disrupts Trypticon from the inside out. Keep in mind, Moonracer, Wheeljack, and Bulkhead have all gotten out of there, sending a few more charges on the way as well. So when Tarn gives them the signal, they blow Trypticon up from the inside out, no diddy. And Tarn activates his technological speech, being able to fully destroy Trypticon, just crumbling him down into nothing more than pieces at this point. And this is where Overlord's like, no, this can't be happening. And to which Unicron simply possesses him for this moment and simply states, I gave you everything. and you're still such a point. And this is where we actually see what happened. Connecting to him at that moment, Tyrannos Prime sensed it, and he punched the Star Saber right through Overlord's chest. Doesn't kill him, but it definitely kills Unicron, who again at that moment, would have merged Sparks, because that's how his kind of a spirit form ultimately works. And so he then tells Brawl, he's all yours. So Overlord weakly looks up and states, well, good run. Killing a few Autobots and taking their lives always gives me a great joy. To which Brawl simply states, Overlord, despite all that you done, kind of pity you. To which he's like, what? What do you mean? I don't need your pity. To which he's like, no, you don't. But I want you to understand something. Everything you pretty much done here was just nothing but chaos without purpose. Going rogue, enjoying the thrill of the kill, it meant nothing in the end. And at the end of it all, look at you. You had nothing. And, more importantly, you had no one. To which Brawl brings down the hammer on his head. 1, 2. And again, you see Overlord's face getting crushed over again. 3, 4. And finally, 5. Smashing his head into pieces. So, the Autobots did it. They won. They killed Overlord. They have the Predacon army. They have the Insecticon army still. Or at least the last remaining members of it, because, some of them would have died with Overlord. Oh, sorry, not Overlord. During the Trypticon skirmish as well. Kind of obvious, right? So, what happens here? Well, I think that's pretty simple. They go back to Cybertron and simply restore it. And the first Autobots to arrive are Ultra Magnus and Smokescreen. And so, when they actually see Tyrannos Prime, Ultra Magnus can easily tell it's Grimlock by his demeanor and his body and stuff like that, and simply states what happened. And so, Tyrannos Prime simply puts a hand over his second-in-command, or another lieutenant's shoulder, and simply states, well, let me tell you the story of how everything went. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Or, that's where we're going to end this series off here. Overlord represented unnatural chaos, more than even the likes of the Decepticons themselves. So when push came to shove, and he had no order, he had no, what's the word I'm looking for? He had no real agenda except just to cause as much chaos as possible. And in doing so, he winded up dying in one of the most profound ways, by a weapon forged by one of the few primes that maintained order. Now, in all honesty, I kind of had Overlord dying maybe around I guess you could say the last episode where Tyrannos Prime, or the last few episodes where Tyrannos Prime got a hold of him, right? But I think him dying here, and especially to Brawl, the person that he originally tormented, to be honest, it was just proper, But that's going to be all for today, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I'll see you guys for the final part of What If Mao Zeno Was Never Corrupted. Then we'll be finishing, or we'll be adding some other parts to series that honestly kind of should have been doing by now. Peace.